Okay, so today we will start with classes and objects. How many of you have watched the videos? The 2 lecture videos posted. Use the reaction from at the bottom, thumbs up, thumbs down. It's okay if you have not watched the videos, but I just want to know how fast I have to take the lecture or how slow I have to take the lecture. How many of you have watched the video? Thumbs up. 2 lectures were posted. Rest of the class, you need to participate. Okay, thumbs up, thumbs down. It's a 50-50 kind of a scenario. Okay, I watched one video. Okay, the first video was the required video for this class right now. So I want you to watch that video. If you have watched the first video, that's cool. If not, we'll be going with the phase, the medium phase, I would say. But let me start sharing my screen. This is chapter 8. Okay, so as I mentioned from the very first day, this is first week. So on the very first day, where I mentioned that we will be going topic by topic. So on Revel, you will see chapter 9. This is building Java program from a different book. So these PowerPoint slides are from different book. I really like these PowerPoint slides. This book is also really good, but they don't have an ebook to do your assignments online. So, so this is I'm utilizing multiple resources. Chapter 8, classes and objects. What are classes and what are objects? You have been hearing this from Java 1, classes and objects. But what is a class? You have already seen a class. You have created a class in Java, right? In Java 1. Currently use chat if you have any queries, if you have any questions, so that I know I will be looking at the chat on and off. But if you have any questions, do post. You can do a direct chat as well. Okay, so what is a class? A class was an entity, right? The class was without creating a class, you were not able to create any of your or write any of your code, right? In Java, the first thing you do is create a class. But what's the purpose of objects? We haven't seen any objects in Java other than creating an objects in arrays, creating a string objects or similar scanner object, like or random object. Those were the objects you have seen. But the major purpose is we create a class and then we use that class as a blueprint to create multiple objects. Like class works like a blueprint, just like a building. You have an architecture of that building. So once you have created the architecture, you can create multiple buildings of the same architecture you have created, right? Same with the class. A program which you have written once, you can create multiple objects to use that code. So what we call a class, it's like a module. You can call it a program. It's a template. So that's what these are the multiple names for the class, or it's like a blueprint. So take a look at this example. You have an iPod blueprint, right? The features, the state and behavior. Over here, the state are the fields, behavior are the methods in programming. Like this is the terms we use for behavior. We are talking about the functionality, the methods, and the state. We are talking about the fields, which I will explain in a minute, like what fields are and what's the difference between fields and variables. Right now, the understanding part is why and what's the concept of a class and how it's connected with an object. What does class do? We have been creating classes from Java 1. We haven't seen a need to create those objects, right? So this is a class. This is one class which you created a blueprint that this is a state, current song, volume, battery life. These are the things every iPod will have, and the behavior will be on and off. Every iPod will play a different song at a different volume, and they can choose a random song, right? They have an option, like they can put it on random, turn on, it will play randomly, or they can turn off the random option and it will be stick to the manual functionality. As you can see, this is a blueprint, this is a class. These are all the objects, multiple objects. All objects have different states. They have different values, but they have same functionality, right? Every iPod will turn on and off. Every iPod will have a so just take an example. If I come to a class, if we are meeting face to face, I'll bring, like we have 30 students in class, I'll bring 30 iPods and I will distribute just like a bonus to every student. So when I provide these iPods to every student will play a different song, a song at a different volume. And it depends. Maybe one student is not using the iPod at all. Like it's not his kind of a thing. He's not interested. One student used like half of the day and rest of the time he was not using that iPod. So every student will have a different battery life. Uh, they have different interest in the songs, right? They have different variant of like listening to the song volume, like some like okay lower volume, some like at a higher volume. So these are all the objects with different values. One class but multiple objects with different values. That's the same thing with classes and objects. You will create the code once and that code will be utilized multiple at multiple, I would say, with multiple objects, with multiple persons, multiple places. Now the term, there are actually four, I would say, major concepts which you will see and learn. We need to enable editing, so annotate. Let's do the annotate part. Let's do the text. So we have four pillars of object-oriented programming, which we call as OOP. The first one is abstraction. Second one is inheritance. We have inheritance, polymorphism. I don't know the spelling for morphism. I think the spelling is wrong for polymorphism. Polymorphism, and then we have interfaces. So these are the four pillars of OOP, object-oriented programming language, which you will cover in first two chapters or first 2 weeks, I would say, or first 3 weeks, because I have split polymorphism in third week because it's a very, very complicated topic. But first you need to worry about abstraction, which we are doing right now. So this is abstraction. Okay, let's close the annotate. So what is abstraction? Abstraction is a term we use to hide our work. So as a programmer, now this is your first thing to start thinking about that, hey, I need to hide my work. Like there must be, if a client comes to you, if a student comes to you, if your cousin or sibling or your friend comes to you and it's like, hey, can you create an app for me? Can you create a website for me? You're like, the only thing that guy or person is interested is in the GUI part, right? He's not interested in your code. So you need to hide your coding from that client. The only thing you're showing that client is the graphical user interface, right? So here's an example. When you have an iPod like this, the previous example, you just know that how that iPod works. You just know that I need to turn on the volume, turn down the volume. I need to, what song I can play, how to turn on the random options and how to turn off the random option. You don't know the functionality. If you go to Best Buy, you bring any electronic stuff, like anything you buy from Best Buy, like a tablet or laptop or anything, and you bring it home. They have a money back guarantee. They can do a refund if that thing doesn't work, right? Yes or no? Do a thumbs up. They can do a return if that thing doesn't work, or maybe after like a week you're not interested, you don't like it, you can return, right? Right? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Yes. So, but what if I buy a tablet and I use a screwdriver and I open it? When I try to open it, like what's inside? Like what's this picture shows? Like I want to see it. Like I have the curiosity to see what's inside. And after I open that thing, and then I'm like, oh God, I messed up. Let's put the thing back together. And now I messed up. I am not able to put those things back together. And I take it to Best Buy and I say, hey, return this, it's not working. Now, will they return? I have opened that thing because there is a sticker at every electronic device at the back that if you open, no returns and no exchange, right? So if you have opened this, any electronic product, the reason why that sticker is on every electronic product, the reason is that you don't know, right? You don't know how to fix it. You don't know what's inside. So you better not try opening it, right? Because you are not an expert, you're not a technician, and you are not the owner of that thing, right? So That's the thing. That's what we call abstraction, is hiding your code. Now we will be distancing between ideas and details. We can use objects without knowing how they work. So without knowing how that works, we are providing your code to the client. And how we will do it? We will be creating two classes. One is programmer class and one is the client class. So what a programmer class does, it will have all of your coding, all your fields, or all of your methods. And what client class will have, the client class will have the main method. So we will not write our main method in programmer's class. Programmer class will only have the functionality, just the blueprint, what this class does. The functionality, how to run, will go to the client. Client will have the main method and will create object of your class. Now, how those things works? Let's open Eclipse. Oops, I have opened up to just do a screen share with Eclipse. So this is my Eclipse. Okay, so what I will do is right click on your project, new, not the Java project, new class. So I'm creating a point class. So this is the point class. I'll say finish. So this is my programmer's class. So what a programmer class looks like, it just looks like a normal class without a main method. Now, first thing is my point class will have two fields, int x, semicolon, int y. Sorry, just y, x and y, int x and int y. These are the two variables. They look like variables, but they are not variables. What we call them is fields, fields. The reason we are calling these two things as fields, let me write it here. These are known as fields. So what is a field and what's the difference between a field and a variable? As you can see, it does look like a variable, and you're like, how we can differentiate that this is a variable or this is a field? This is how you can differentiate. Fields are always at the top, declared after, just right after the class, they're at the top, and they are part of the class. So the fields are part of the class, and what variables are, they just change. They are just holding the memory space. So they're not part of any of the class. If you say int x, on the next line you can say x, you are equals to something else. But with the class blueprint, where you don't have a main method and you are creating them as a field, the client will change their values. And whenever the client object is created, client is creating an object of your class, it will assign the value. It will assign or access your fields. So these are the fields, and this is your class. This is a programmer class, and then new class, and this is your client class. This is the class you will be giving it to the programmers. This is your client. So client will have this one, and your client class will have the main method, which is public static void main string square brackets arguments like this, and starting curly braces and ending curly braces. Now, how to connect these two classes, point and client? So point is the actual class. Client came to you and he's like, create a class point, and I just need x and y values, x and y fields, just simple one. So how to create an object, just like you were creating an object for scanner, and just like you were creating an object for random, you write the class name. This is your point class, right? Same class name, P capital, the P will be capital. Give it a name, P, I'll just say P equals to new. New is the keyword which tells you that this is an object. Now, new what? New point, open close parenthesis and a semicolon. That's it. This is how you have created an object of P. And what P class is pretty much empty right now. It's just got two fields, X and Y. And what you will do is you will say, hey, P dot X. As you can see, it identifies that yes, point class do have an X equals to 5 semicolon. And then you'll say P dot Y, you are equals to 77 semicolon. That's it. And then if I want to print system.out.println, and I'll say, hey, print P for me. What do you think will be the output? Guess the output. I really want everyone to guess the output. What's the output? Guess the output in the chat. It's a guess, so I want you to make wrong guesses. Because then I can tell you the right answer if you have the wrong answers, right? I just got one right answer in a direct chat. He's smart. He's like, I don't want to share it with everyone. They can steal my answers. So he did a direct chat. So let's run. Let's run. And the output is something interesting. One of the students mentioned in the direct chat, the output will be the memory address. The reason the output is a memory address is because your P, if you recall, when you were printing your arrays, so when you were printing your arrays, you were not saying like how you were creating an array in square brackets, a equals to new in square brackets, and then you were adding some values. And if I have to print the array, you cannot say system.out.println a, right? You were doing something else. Does anyone remember what you were doing? How you were printing an array? How you were printing an array? There was a way, there was a method. Use the direct chat. Using for loop. That was one way. There was a direct way. There was a method called toString. You're using toString method. So to print your objects. So P is not just a variable, it's an object. To print P right now, there is one way is you can say P.x and then concatenation operator, double quotation marks, comma, and concatenation operator, and you can say P.y, and this can print. Run your code. It's 5,77. So it can print your output. You are accessing. This is known as access. It's accessing your values of objects. So of fields, sorry. So the how to do just P, because this is so tedious. Like I just want to say P and it should print like this, right? My P's have like this P only got 2 fields and it should print the values of those 2 fields. So whatever the code, whatever the method you have to do with this point class, it goes in the point class. So we'll go back over here in point class. And what we are doing is we are writing our string method, public void. Okay, one thing about static is you won't write static method inside of your point class right now because that will be associated with a class. We are associating this with the object. I have created a separate video. Do watch that video to understand the concept of why we are not writing static. Okay, so public void toString. Let's write toString and toString. And we are writing system.out. Oh, I forgot open close parenthesis. System.out.println. And what we want this toString to print is, let's say, parenthesis and the value of concatenation operator X, concatenation operator, comma, and concatenation operator, comma, Y. And concatenation operator closing the parenthesis, so it will close the parenthesis and ends with a semicolon. Okay, what's the error? Public change to return type toString. Okay, yeah, so it returned. Sorry, so we are using the toString, so there is a way to writing it. So we will write string, a return type is string. So instead of system.out.println, we will say return and double quotation marks. Because we are returning the string. We are missing one double quotation marks. Okay. Why it's okay. And quotation marks plus X is extra concatenation, extra comma. Okay, all set. It does look confusing. The only thing I was trying to do is this is the syntax. Otherwise, you can just say x plus y, and it will print the values of x and y. Okay, so x and y must be outside of double quotation marks. Otherwise, it will print just x and y. So as the concatenation operators are just to make this fancy with adding comma and the open close parenthesis. Any questions so far? Use the chat. Let's go back to our client class, and instead of p, I would say p dot toString method, and then what we call run, and 5,77 is print. Now we got our desired output. Any questions so far? Any questions? Nope. Just say yes or no so that I know. Even just say no. Yes, quotation marks are just to make the format, just to make it look a little fancy. That's it. You can remove this, and it will just print 5,77 like that. So it's a string, toString method. That's what we have done. Just written one simple point class. It's not that we will move to the harder code step by step. The only thing you need to understand is we have created two classes from now on in Java 2. Every time, whatever the task is, you are creating two classes. One is a programmer class, one is the client class. Which one is the programmer? This point class is the programmer who is holding all of your information. Even if a client says, hey, create a calculator for me, you will create a calculator class and a client class. So your calculator class will have all the functionality, and your client will only create the object and call addition, subtraction, whatever your client wants to do. Okay, now let's move on to share screen. Let's see what we have on PowerPoint slides. What's the next topic? We have already seen fields. This is what we call field, variable inside an object that is part of its state. So you can have multiple fields of the same class, as many fields as you want. Those fields are representing like as many objects, and every object will have their own x and y value. So let me show you that example in a minute. So that let me see what's the next topic we have. Instance method are known as, just like with the toString method we created, that is an instance method, or we call it as object method. Each method exists inside of each object of a class and gives behavior to each object separately. Okay, so let me move on to accessor, mutator, by these methods are here. Let's move on to constructors. Okay, so let's open our Eclipse again. Let's open Eclipse. Okay, so the one thing which, if I don't forget, you can have multiple objects of the same class. So every object will have their own x and y value. That's why we call them not variables. They are known as fields, because fields are associated with objects. So if I say a point p1 equals to new point and open close parenthesis, and I will say p1 dot x UR equals to 66, semicolon p1 dot y UR equals to 90, something like that. And then I will say system dot out dot println, and I will call, for example, let's say p dot x, and then p dot x, comma, I will say p1 dot x. Let's put concatenation into the quotation marks, comma, double quotation marks, concatenation, p1 dot x, and yes. So I have px, which is 5, and p1 dot x, which is 66, but x and y are declared once. So that's how it is helping you with the help of redundancy. It is reducing the redundancy. So you just create those fields X and Y once, but whenever those objects are created, every object will have its own X and Y value. So when you're printing, you say px and p1.x. When I run, it will print their own values from their own memory space. So it says p, you got x value as 5. It didn't modify, it didn't change the value of x and y for p. So when I create p1 object, it comes with own x and y. P object, p2, p3, depending on how many objects you're creating, every objects will have their own state. So remember the iPod example, it had state. So these are states. So every state will be different. As you can see, all the states are different. State in coding, it's referring to the fields. Every field's values will be different depending on their object. Sorry. Okay, so the other thing we have is another topic, which is part of this class as an object, is constructors, which are very, very important. If you have notepad, if you're taking notes, write it down, these 3 rules for constructors. Constructors are always public. Okay, constructors are always public. Then they have the same class name. Constructor name will be the same class name. Third rule, they don't have a return type, not even void. So you will not even write void, and they are declared at the top. So how you will create a constructor after creating a class, and constructors are not inside of your main method, constructors are part of this class. So after creating your fields, you will create constructors over here. So what were the rules? Constructors are always public, and no return type, it means not even void. So I will not write anything. And what's the name? What's the name of your constructor? It's the same as your class name. So what's the class name? Point, like this. They are constructors. If you don't have a constructor, Java uses a default constructor, or create a default constructor for you, having x equals to 0 and y equals to 0. You can have multiple constructor depending on with different number of parameters. And what constructor does, as you saw, that there was no constructor. So when you said new point, open close parenthesis, that was easy. It was acceptable. But what if I create a constructor like this, public point, that this is the rule. Whenever you create an object of this class, I want you to give me the value of x and give me the value of y. And inside, what I will do is I will say x, you are equals to x, and y, you are equals to y. Let's change new x and new y, and x, you are equals to new, let's change whatever the new x are coming in new value, and then given by the user. So now this is a constructor. Then whenever you create an object of my class, which is point, I want you to give me the values of x and y. So, and assign it to these two x and y. So these 2 lines will be removed. Now take a look. After creating that constructor, when I came back to my main method or the client class, there is an error. 2 errors. It says, let's read the error. It says the constructor point is undefined. So when you create your own constructor, Java no longer uses the default constructor which it was using before. So, but if you want Java, if you want your client, or you want to give your client an option that yes, it's okay, you can assign the values later. Yes, you can have a default constructor, then you have to create one. So if I create a constructor here, public, and how you create a constructor, public, and same class name, and open close parenthesis. This is known as a default constructor, nothing inside, no parameters. And you can say x, you are equals to 0, and just setting default values, y equals to 0. So when you go back to client, your error is gone, because now this is acceptable if you do this. Now let's change. I say point p1, I'll say 66 and 90, 66 comma 90. So now I can remove these two lines. As you created P1 equals to new point 66 comma 90, it goes to the first constructor. New x is 66, new y is 90, and it says x u r equals to new x, y equals to new y. And then when you just run what you have, it's the same 5 comma 66, because this is already assigned. Now you don't have to directly access the values and assign the values. But as you have written default constructor that I don't know the values yet, it says it's okay because you have created, you have given the option to assign the values later, and by default x is 0 and y is 0. And then you later on you can say p dot x for this, p dot y you are equals to this. Any questions so far at this point? Any questions? Drop it in the chat, yes or no, or you thumbs up, thumbs down. Ooh, great. Okay, so this is what we have so far. We have seen fields. We have seen how to create two classes. We have seen constructors, multiple way of declaring the constructors. And you can have multiple constructor. Maybe you create one more constructor, public point, and just asking for X value, or just asking for Y value, something like that. It depends. All depends on your fields, which are over here declared. Okay, so next topic. Let's share my screen. Let's see what on the PowerPoint slide. Okay, constructors. We have talked about constructors. Go over these PowerPoint slides. Trust me, it's the same what I'm teaching right now. So no surprises. So if you see anything new, you can ask in the next class. So remember, now we have encapsulation. Encapsulation is after abstraction, we have encapsulation. What encapsulation does, it's like enforcing the security. Remember this was abstraction, like, okay, this is don't open this product, right? Don't open it. This is an electronic product, so don't open it. And only I know the functionality. Now, what encapsulation does is like forces the abstraction, like more security. Like how more security? Now you're using the private keywords, making your field private. How come your client can say p1.x and px or py, and then you are equals to 5 or you're equals to this, and it's letting you directly access your fields. You cannot directly allow the client to directly access your fields. So that's why you'll say private. You will set your fields as private, like private int ID, private string name, so that the client cannot directly access the values. Right now, you won't see a big difference because we will see because X and Y values are not that important, and we will let user, we will tell a way to user to access those values as well. We have to access, we have getters, and to mutate, we have setters. Whenever you use private keyword and you want to make an exception for some of the functionalities, you use getter and setter methods, which you will create, and user will go through those setters and getter methods to access those fields. So let's go back. This is, or you can just directly take a look over here. This is what we have so far, right? Your public class point, you have private index, private int y. Now we are putting private keyword with our fields, and same constructor. Now public int for example, you're like, for example, your grades. Let's say your grades will be set as private, right? But I will write the getter method for your grades so that you can see your grades, right? It's, you want to see the grades, but you cannot change it. So when you have getter methods, you can say, hey, get X or get GPA, and it will give you the value of your GPA. It will just show you the grades. But if you want to say, hey, I want to change the grades, it won't give you to change the grades. Same example goes where you want user Y, then why we have the setter method. Sometimes it gives you we can put setter methods with the address that, for example, student want to change the address or a phone number. Then we have the setter method, and user will go through that method to change the value. User cannot directly touch the fields to change the value. So let's stop share. What about anonymous variables? Which anonymous variables? We haven't created the anonymous variables. Which one? Share screen. We were on Eclipse. So as you will see, int x, int y, this is where we have to put our private keyword, that they are private now. And private here, private int x, private int y. No changes, no errors, right? Everything looks great. Let's go back to client. And you will have 3 errors. And the 3 errors is now you cannot directly change the values. You cannot directly access the values. Now how to make it possible? If you want user, for example, I have made x and y values as private, but I want user to see the values, at least see. Then what I can do is I can say public. Okay, so your getters and setter methods cannot be private, because if you set them private, then there is no point, right, of creating it. Getter method means user wants to see the value. It means you're returning something, and depending on the data type you have for your fields and what the getter method you're writing, I'm writing getter method for get x, and we are not asking anything from user, and I will just say return x like this. Same goes with the getter method for y. Maybe sometimes you want, okay, I just want the getter method. User can only see the value of x and cannot see the value of y. Then you will not write getter method for y. So if you want user to access the values of y as well, then you will write. And same, get x, get y. You can give any name, but you need to remember. But as a programmer, everyone remembers getters and setters. If you want to access those fields, return y semicolon. Let's go back to client. There will be errors, still those errors, and we need to remove these 2 lines because those were changing the values. You're saying x equals to something else. So that's like changing the values, and we haven't set or allowed to set the value, which is setter methods. But there is a still error over here, p.x and p1.x, because now you won't be able to access the values like this. You have to go through a method. So I will say p.getx, concatenation operator space, comma, concatenation operator p1 dot get x, printing both the x values just like previously, but now this time with the getter method. As you can see, it's 0. Now we can clearly see that when you create a default object, because I have removed those 2 lines which were assigning the values for p. So as I have removed, so p is 0. You have not assigned any values to p. As you can see, those 2 values are removed. But what if I want to assign 0, 0, it's 0. I want to assign p some value. I cannot do it because it's not allowed by my code, which I have written. But if I want, okay, I'm like, okay, you can assign value only for x. So I will write the setter method. As I am changing the values, I'm not returning anything. I will not write the return data type. It will be void. But as I am changing the value, to change a value, I need a new value. So I need a parameter, like what's the new value? And according to the field I am changing, the data type is int. So my parameter will be int as well. So int, let's say new x, right? Because I am writing a setter method for x, it will be new x, open close parenthesis, and inside I will say x, you are equals to new x, whatever user has given. Now going back to the client class, and let's say p was undefined. So I'll say p dot set x, and inside let's say it's 45. Now let's run, and over here p dot get x will be 45, and p1 dot get x will be 66. See, and but as you can see, only X is assigned and Y is 0 because I have only written the setter method for X and not for Y. Any questions so far? Use chat. Okay. Okay. So this is what we have. This is called encapsulation, where you're using private keyword, setting your fields as private, and then using the getters and setter methods, creating those getters and setter methods to get started. So no questions. Cool. It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. I really want you, before jumping on to the next week, you need to understand these concepts very. Practice as much as possible, a lot, practice a lot, because the next topic, inheritance, will add on to whatever you're learning in this week, which will be a lot. Too much. It's gonna be a lot of information, and it requires time. Trust me, only first 2 weeks are hard for absorbing as much information, because they are the core for the whole quarter for Java 2. So understanding the classes and objects, and these things will be on your fingertips at the end of the quarter, especially week 1 and 2. They are hard to absorb because you're coming from Java 1, but these are the core points which will help you a lot. Okay, so no questions, right? So let's move on to the activity which I have. Okay, let's see. It's not gonna help me. I'm not sure. Okay, go in your Canvas. That will be easy for you. Go on Canvas, week 1 module, where you have project for chapter 9. I think it's unpublished. Chapter 9. Okay, yeah, it's let me publish. It will be easier for you if you go in where it says practice in week 1 module. At the bottom, it says practice and it says project for chapter 9. Open that one. Let me share my screen. And this is the one I'm talking about. This is your week 1 module. At the bottom, project for chapter 9. Open this, it's published. It's this one, the account class. I'll be putting you in breakout rooms, and